Alrighty, J's and Wallet. Wait, let's drop.
Here as applies to scrolls and lore that I clearly didn't write myself. For as long as computers have existed in the land, there has been a CLI. Except the king is lying on this decree, as original computers use sheets of cardboard and paper, known as punch cards, which don't have any interface for users. This sucked, so people eventually developed cathode-ray-tube monitors in order to have proper interface, which would come to be known as command line interface, as decreed by the kings. This was later adopted into TUI and further developed into GUI as we know it today. So today, on the ABCs of Unix, we're talking about CLI and TUI and the current kingdom of Unix, That is the most serious I think I could be while reading this shit out. Moving on.
With that out of the way, what is CLI? CLI directly stands for Command Line Interface. We're always going to use my personal definition and mix TUI with CLI, given both are text-based methods of using software. Where CLI and TUI differ is how they are used. Command line interface is what you find in things like Vim, where you have to use commands to make things happen. Whereas TUI is best understood in my case with Discordo, where it removes the graphics for a super lightweight experience that can be ran in a terminal.
Moving on, we're talking about history. Just kind of like how I have history. Oh, fuck your mother.
CLI and TUI was the primary way of computing for a long-ass time. While GUI interfaces for desktops came about in the early 80s, they cost way too much money just for anyone to buy. $30,000 is a piss ton of money. However, up until Windows came about in the mid-80s, CLI and TUI were the primary way of computing. Except I lied. Up until the 90s, CLI and TUI was the primary way of doing things based on just how economics break down. CLI and TUI are both still used heavily today. How do I know this? Because that's what servers run. As you said, jokes aside, 99% of servers you'll find run a headless system, which means they run without a desktop environment, which is CLI and TUI. For example, let's say you got a mini PC to seed torrents or whatever you were seeding torrents for. Let's also say this mini PC has to run 24/7, which is its entire purpose to seed these torrents. But there is a problem. This mini PC is high traffic and doesn't have that much RAM, so you need something efficient. A desktop environment would take up way too much RAM on this system, so what do? Make it headless. For this, let's say we use Ubuntu server. Why? Because I like the color orange, and I'm allowed to do whatever I like to do, because I am me, and this is my channel, meaning I get to choose what our topics and examples are. Ubuntu server does not have a desktop environment, which is perfect for our nice CLI and TUI tools. For this case, we will use rtorrent. I do not need to have a desktop environment installed to use rtorrent because it is TUI. Perfect! But let's say I want to chat in Discord on my little server guy to talk with someone who wants to host a torrent. How do I do that? Discordo, a TUI client for Discord. Amazing, but those are both TUI. I want a full CLI system to minimize bloat. For CLI, for my example, we're going to use Vim, which is CLI in its purest form. Vim is a very common software which is pretty much installed on any type of Linux system, so it's not overly hard to get in your hands on, and if you've used a window manager before, you would have experience with Vim, because you have to edit your config files, and it's pretty much the best definition of actual CLI that most Linux users would use. Anyway, back to the script. Let's say you don't have a server. What good is CLI and TUI to you? Well, for one, it helps you get comfortable with the terminal, which is important to do as a Linux user. The terminal is one of, if not the most important tools we have as Unix-like power users. Plus, you can flex online that you don't need no GUI. Outside of that, and performance doesn't really matter to you, TUI and CLI don't actually have that many uses for the average user.
Overall, CLI, TUI are two very important things to keep in mind, as not only do they affect us and people who do Unix, like, think of the BSD networking nerds, think of ultralight nerds who do stuff in like Arch Linux Bear and don't use any desktop environments or window management, or think of just people like me who just like to mess around with CLI and TUI tools to save a little bit of time here throughout the day. They can actually be faster than a GUI method when you have practice with them. Overall, something I really recommend check out and keep in mind, as it makes up a very, very important part of this community. That being said, roll the credits.
Also, that's a little side announcement here at the end of the video. Well, thank you for watching, it's been great. However, next video is going to be out a little bit slower. I have a couple school things to keep in mind and do. Believe it or not, I am still a student. And the next video will take a little bit longer to get out, but it should be a lot better. Yeah, thanks for watching.